we go. The diaphragm contributes to 60 to 70% of the efforts to breathe, whereas the intercostal muscles contribute to the remaining 30 to 40%. Thus, a significant injury that prevents the diaphragm from functioning properly will cause the patient's breathing to become ineffective. In the lungs, oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged through the thin walls of the alveoli and the capillaries. All right, in alveolar capillary exchange, oxygen-rich air enters the alveoli through each inspiration and passes through the capillary walls into the bloodstream. Carbon dioxide and other waste gases move from the blood through the capillary walls into the alveoli and are then exhaled. In capillary cellular exchange throughout the body, carbon dioxide moves from the cells to the capillaries, and oxygen moves from the capillaries to the cells. All right, this is a little picture of how it works, and another little picture of how this works. All right, adequate breathing is characterized by an adequate respiratory rate and tidal volume. Respiratory rate is the number of breaths a patient takes in 1 minute. What is the normal respiratory rate for an adult? 12 to 20. Tidal volume is the amount of air a patient breathes in and out with one regular breath. All right. Infants or kids, as they age, the respiratory rate will decrease. The respiration should be regular in rhythm and free of unusual sounds such as wheezing. The chest should expand outward and equally with each breath, indicating an adequate depth or tidal volume. All right, so to have adequate breathing, we have to have a regular rhythm. It needs to be effortless. Good chest expansion. All right, needs to be equal and adequate. No abnormal sounds and no use of accessory muscles. If either the rate or the tidal volume is inadequate, the breathing is considered inadequate and immediate ventilation is necessary. Okay? Does everybody understand that? If the rate is too fast or too slow, if they're not breathing regularly, if they have diminished or absent breath sounds, unequal or inadequate chest expansion, pale or blue skin or mucous membranes, or agonal breathing, you need to intervene. Kevin's assessment of the patient's breathing reveals respirations of 30 per minute that are shallow. Is this normal? Okay. Is he ventilating well? No. Breath sounds on the left side of the chest are diminished in comparison to those on the right. What are the patient's ventilations, adequate or inadequate? All right. How are the patient's injuries affecting his body at the cellular level? Okay, he's not doing an exchange, all right, or not enough. Circulatory system is composed of the heart, blood vessels, and blood. It is a closed system that transports blood to all parts of the body. Blood brings oxygen, nutrients, and other essential chemical elements to the tissue cells. It removes carbon dioxide and other waste products resulting from cellular metabolism. Circulatory system has several functions. Provides a medium for perfusion of cells with oxygen and other nutrients. And it removes the waste products and carbon dioxide. It transports blood. Serves as a reservoir to house the blood. Serves as a medium for buffering the body's acid-base balance. Provides a mechanism to deliver immune cells and other substances to fight infection. And it contains substances that promote clotting. All right. The heart has 4 chambers. The upper chambers are called the atria. This receives blood from the veins. Are veins oxygenated or deoxygenated? Deoxygenated. Okay. The right atrium receives oxygen-depleted blood from the veins of the body. The left atrium receives oxygen-rich blood from the pulmonary vein from the lungs. Okay, the pulmonary vein is the only vein in the body that transports oxygenated blood. The lower chambers are called ventricles. They pump blood out to the arteries. The right ventricle pumps oxygen-depleted blood to the right pulmonary artery, which transports the blood to the lungs where it will be oxygenated. The pulmonary artery is the only one that transports deoxygenated blood. The left ventricle pumps oxygen-rich blood to major arteries from the heart, the aorta, from which the blood is gradually delivered to all body cells. Then you have a series of valves between the chambers of the heart to keep blood flowing in one direction and prevents a backflow. Alright, they are the tricuspid, bicuspid, pulmonic, and aortic. And I would highly, highly suggest you know this right here. Blood flow through the chambers of the heart. Blood valves. Where it goes. Alright. You have aortic arteries, coronary arteries, carotid, femoral, and arteries of the arms and legs. Your aortic artery, what is that? Okay, it's the first branch off the heart. Alright. It supplies oxygen-rich blood to the thorax where other arteries branch off from there. Okay. Coronary arteries, where are those located? And what do they do?
One on each side of the neck.
Coronary?
Yeah, coronary arteries. They are, oh wait. Sorry.
Coronary arteries are the arteries that feed your heart. Okay. Carotid arteries.
Those are the ones that are on each side of your neck.
Those are the ones that are on each side of your neck that perfuse your brain. Femoral arteries. In your femur region. Alright. And you have the major arteries of the arms and the legs. Okay. You have brachial artery, radial artery, popliteal. Alright. So where's your carotid pulse? In your neck. Alright. What about your brachial pulse? What part? Upper? Lower?
Like upper bicep.
Okay. Alright. Alright, a tiny blood vessel that connects an arteriole to a venule. A capillary has walls that allow for the exchange of gases, nutrients, and waste at the cellular level. All fluid, oxygen, and carbon dioxide exchange takes place between the blood and tissue cells through the wall of the capillaries in all parts of the body. The smallest branch of veins is a venule. It is connected to the distal ends of capillaries. Blood that has been depleted of oxygen flows from the capillaries into the venules, from which it is transported into larger veins. A vein carries blood back to the heart. All veins except the pulmonary veins carry oxygen-depleted blood. I would highly recommend you know that. The major veins include the vena cava and the pulmonary veins. The vena cava carry oxygen-depleted blood back to the right atrium where it begins circulation through the heart and lungs. The superior vena cava enters the top of the right atrium carrying oxygen-depleted blood from the upper body. The inferior vena cava enters the bottom of the right atrium carrying oxygen-depleted blood from the lower part of the body. The pulmonary veins carry oxygen-rich blood from the lungs to the left atrium. They are the only veins that carry oxygenated blood. Alright, so you have arteries, you have veins, and then you have capillaries. Okay? We're going to go over this a little bit more in cardiology, which will be the next section that we go over. Alright, in the heart, at the atrium, at the top of the atrium, you have the SA node, or the sinoatrial node. Okay, this is where the conduction starts. That's known as the pacemaker of the heart. and you have the AV node. If the SA node stops, the AV node will take over. Okay, the intrinsic rate of the SA node is 60 to 100. The intrinsic rate of the AV node is 40 to 60, I believe. Okay. Then you have the bundle of His, and the electricity just kind of follows that pathway. It starts at the SA, it goes to the AV, then it goes down through the bundle of His, okay, through the bundle branches to the Purkinje fibers, and that's actually what causes the heart to squeeze. All right, blood components. Red blood cells contain hemoglobin, which allows them to carry oxygen and carbon dioxide. Hemoglobin gives the blood its red color. White blood cells are part of the immune system and defend against infection. Platelets help form blood clots. Plasma is the liquid portion of blood that allows substances to be carried through the body. When the left ventricle contracts, sending a wave of blood through the arteries, the pulse, or the wave of blood, is propelled. Can be felt at various points called pulse points. Okay? The pulse is the measure of effectiveness of the left ventricle as a pump and provides information about the volume of blood being injected by the left ventricle and being carried in the arteries. Okay? So if they have a very faint pulse, do you think their heart is doing what it's supposed to do? It's not, okay? There could be many different reasons for that. But however, I want you to know something ain't right. The central pulses are the carotid and femoral pulse. It's located centrally on the body, closer to the heart. The peripheral pulses are the radial, brachial, posterior tibial, dorsalis pedis. This is located on the peripheral of the body or further away from the heart. Blood pressure is the force exerted by the blood on the interior wall of the arteries. The systolic blood pressure is exerted against the walls of the arteries when the left ventricle contracts. All right, I'm going to read that again. The systolic blood pressure is exerted against the walls of the arteries when the left ventricle contracts. Okay, which number is your systolic? The top number, okay? The diastolic blood pressure is exerted against the walls of the arteries when the left ventricle is at rest or between contractions. Which one is your diastolic? It's your bottom, okay? The systolic blood pressure measures the effectiveness of the pumping function of the heart. The diastolic blood pressure measures the resistance in the arteries between contractions. Okay? The systolic blood pressure is what we're really, really worried about at this point. Okay? If your systolic blood pressure is below 90, what are you considered? Hypotensive. Another type of pressure found inside the vessel is hydrostatic pressure. Hydrostatic pressure is the force exerted on the inside of the vessel walls because the blood pressure and volume. A significant increase in hydrostatic pressure may cause the blood in the capillaries to force fluid through the capillary wall. Basically, the capillaries begin to leak. Okay? Which is typically water and not whole blood. This may produce edema, which is swelling that occurs in the tissue. If the capillaries in the lungs are leaking, the fluid will collect between the alveoli and the capillaries. This will force the alveoli further away from the capillaries, making gas exchange more difficult and less effective. Okay? The further away they are, the more stuff they have to go through, the harder it is. Significant increase in the hydrostatic pressure in the arterioles may cause the blood to leak this water out. Okay, it causes a greater distance between the alveoli and the capillaries. Okay, so not only does oxygen and carbon dioxide have to go from areas of higher concentration to lower concentration, now they also have to go through this excess water at a greater distance. All right. All right, circulatory system. Perfusion is the delivery of oxygen, glucose, and other nutrients to the cells of all organ systems, and the elimination of carbon dioxide and other waste products that result from the constant, adequate circulation of blood through the capillaries. Shock or hypoperfusion is the significant supply of oxygen and other insufficient supply of oxygen and other nutrients to some of the body's cells, and the inadequate elimination of carbon dioxide and other waste that can result from adequate circulation of blood. It is a state of profound depression and the vital process of the body. All right. The two most important gases you need to be concerned with are oxygen and carbon dioxide. Cells require oxygen to function effectively and survive. Carbon dioxide is a waste product that must be carried away from the cells and eliminated by the lungs. An effective transport system must be in place to continuously deliver oxygen to the cells and eliminate carbon dioxide. Oxygen is carried in the blood in 2 ways, whereas carbon dioxide is carried in 3 ways. Oxygen is attached to the hemoglobin and dissolves in plasma. About 97% of the oxygen carried in the blood is attached to the hemoglobin on the red blood cell. The remaining 3%, not enough to survive on alone, is dissolved in the blood plasma. Carbon dioxide is transported in the blood as bicarbonate attached to hemoglobin. Approximately 70% of carbon dioxide is carried in the blood in the form of bicarbonate. The bicarbonate is formed when the carbon dioxide molecule enters the red blood cell and combines with water. The bicarbonate that results leaves the red blood cell and circulates in the blood. When the bicarbonate reaches the lungs, it re-enters the red blood cell, combines with hydrogen, and disassociates into carbon dioxide and water. The carbon dioxide leaves the red blood cell and is blown off by the lungs. 23% of carbon dioxide attaches to hemoglobin on the surface of the red blood cell. It attaches to a different site than the site where oxygen attaches. Once the blood reaches the lungs, the hemoglobin or carbon dioxide bond is broken and the carbon dioxide enters the alveoli and is exhaled from the lungs. Only 7% of carbon dioxide is carried in the blood, is actually dissolved in plasma. Okay? So there has to be a chemical reaction for us to get the carbon dioxide out where it needs to go. Cells require energy to survive. The main source of energy is glucose. That is metabolized inside the cell. In the ideal state, glucose metabolism occurs with adequate amounts of oxygen present. The metabolized glucose provides large amounts of energy for the cells to use. The final byproduct of glucose metabolism are water, heat, and carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide is transported away from the cell in one of the methods we talked about earlier, and then is blown off by the lungs. This kind of metabolism is known as aerobic metabolism. Aerobic means with oxygen. Metabolism refers to chemical and physical changes that take place within the cell. If oxygen is not available when the cell is metabolizing glucose, very little energy is produced for the cell, and the end product is acid. Acid is bad for the body if it accumulates. This process of metabolizing glucose without producing much energy is known as anaerobic metabolism. Anaerobic means without oxygen. If a patient is losing blood and very little oxygen is being delivered to the cells, very little energy is being produced. All right, Kevin completes his primary assessment as Tom continues airway management, and the assisting EMT continues to control bleeding. They package the patient and load him into the ambulance for transport. During the assessment, Kevin notices again how pale this patient's skin is and that it is cool and clammy to the touch. What about the patient's situation could explain his decreased level of consciousness that we talked about earlier? Okay. What else? Why is he not getting enough oxygen? Okay, loss of blood. That's a good one. Damage to his lung. Good, good, good. What significance should the skin's finding have? Is that an indicator of how well they're perfusing, how well they're oxygenating? Okay. That's going to be your first telltale sign. The nervous system controls the voluntary and involuntary activity of the human body. It enables the individual to be aware of and react to environment. It also coordinates the response of the body to stimuli and keeps the body system working all together. Nerves carry impulses from tissue and organs to the nerve centers and from nerve centers to other tissues and organs. The nervous system is divided into two structural divisions, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system consists of the brain, which is located in the cranium, and the spinal cord, which is in the spinal column. The brain, which is the control center of the nervous system, is probably the most highly specialized organ in the body. It weighs about 3 pounds in the average adult, is richly supplied with blood vessels, and requires considerable oxygen to perform effectively. The brain does not store glucose and requires a constant supply. Also, glucose can cross the blood-brain barrier. Okay. It has 3 main subdivisions: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. A smaller subdivision of the brain, the pons, acts as a bridge that connects the 3. The spinal cord is about 18 inches long and has an extension of the brainstem. The major function of the spinal cord is the conduction of nerve impulses. Many nerves enter and leave the spinal cord at different levels. These nerves all connect with nerve centers located in the brain or the spinal cord. Alright, the cerebrum is the larger, outermost portion of the brain. It controls sensation, thought, and memory. It initiates and manages conscious movements. Okay. The brain stem consists of the pons, medulla oblongata, and I'm trying to remember how to pronounce this. Encephalothon. Yeah. Okay. The medulla has 3 major control centers. You have respiratory, cardiac, and vasomotor. Just sit it somewhere on the desk. All right, thanks. The cerebellum, okay, it's the bottom part, the little bitty part on the back end. I always think about it as being a bell. Okay, that's how I remember the 2. All right, the cerebellum, located posteriorly and inferiorly, coordinates muscle activity, maintains balance with input from the eyes and the ears. Spinal cord extends from the brainstem, conducts nerve impulses that enter and exit at different levels of the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system is composed of the nerves located outside the spinal cord and brain. Afferent nerves carry sensory information from the body to the spinal cord and brain. Efferent nerves carry motor information from the brain and spinal cord to the body. Afferent nerves go from the body to the spinal cord to the brain. I always think about it as it's the opposite. I would think that afferent would be away, but it actually too, if that makes sense. The functional divisions of the nervous system are the voluntary and the autonomic. The voluntary nervous system influences the activity of skeletal muscles and movements. Autonomic, as the name implies, it's automatic. It influences the activities of muscles and glands. It is partially independent of the rest of the nervous system. divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system is activated when the body is challenged by stressors. This is your fight or flight, your sympathetic nervous system. Any kind of trauma, blood loss, fright, the actions, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in. All right. The parasympathetic nervous system returns the body process to normal, or it depresses the body function. Okay. For consciousness, you need to know this. For a patient to be in a conscious or awake state, the reticular activating system has to be up and running and at least one hemisphere of your brain. If either the reticular activating system or both cerebral hemispheres are damaged or not functioning properly, you will become unconscious. Endocrine system is made up of ductless glands. This is the body's regulators. Okay, secretions from these glands are called hormones, which are chemical substances that have effects on the activity of certain organs. Hormones are carried by the bloodstream to all parts of the body, affecting physical strength, mental ability, build, stature, reproduction, hair growth, voice pitch, and behavior. How people think, act, and feel depends largely on those secretions. The endocrine glands discharge secretions directly into your bloodstream. Good health depends on a well-balanced output of hormones. Endocrine imbalance yields profound changes in growth and serious changes in emotional, physical, and sexual behavior. Alright, the pineal gland is a small gland located superior and posterior to the thalamus. This gland produces the hormone melatonin, which inhibits the function of the reproductive system. The thyroid gland, which is in the anterior neck, regulates metabolism, growth, and development and the activity of the nervous system. The parathyroid gland is behind the thyroid, produces the hormone necessary for metabolism of calcium and phosphorus. Adrenal glands sit on top of the kidneys, secretes epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and norepinephrine. Postponed muscle fatigue increases the storage of sugar, controls kidney function, and regulates the metabolism of salt and water. The gonads, which are your ovaries and testes, produce the hormones that govern reproduction and sex characteristics. The islets of Langerhans, which are in the pancreas, make insulin, which allows glucose to enter the cell and produce glucagon, a hormone that raises the glucose level in the blood. Pituitary gland, which is the base of the brain, is the master gland. It regulates the thyroid, parathyroid, the pancreas, the gonads, metabolism of fatty acids, some basic proteins, blood sugar reactions, and urinary excretion. Thymus gland, which is in the neck, superior to the heart, secretes hormone thymosin. This thymosin increases the development and maturation of the immune system. Alright. Epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and norepinephrine are two hormones secreted by the adrenal gland. These hormones produce many of the signs and symptoms seen in patients when the sympathetic nervous system is stimulated. To understand the signs and symptoms that are produced, you must first understand the basic of the four effects. Okay? You have an alpha effect, you have two alpha effects, and two beta effects. Alright, your alpha 1 and your beta 1 work on the heart. Your beta 2 and your alpha 2 work on the lungs. You have one heart and two lungs. Okay? Norepinephrine has mostly alpha 1 and alpha 2 properties, with lesser beta 1 and beta 2 properties. The primary effect of norepinephrine are on blood vessels. Usually causes the blood vessels to constrict, and it raises your blood pressure. Alright, alpha-1 causes vasoconstriction, which makes skin cool and pale. Increases sweat production, which makes skin cool and clammy. Alpha-2 regulates the alpha-1 effect. Beta-2 increases heart rate, contractility, and speed of cardiac electrical conduction. Beta-2 is smooth muscle relaxation. It dilates the bronchioles and the blood vessels. Alright, integumentary. All the various tissues, organs, and systems that make up the human body are separated from the outside environment by the skin, which is also known as the integumentary system. Your skin protects the body from the environment, bacteria, and other foreign organisms. It regulates the temperature, serves as a receptor for heat, cold, touch, pain, pressure. It aids in the regulation of water and electrolytes. Skin has 3 layers: the epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutaneous layer. The epidermis, or outermost layer of skin, is composed of 4 layers of cells. The outer 2 layers are dying and dead cells that are sloughed off as new cells replace them. The skin's pigment, or the melanin, is in the deepest layers of the epidermis. The dermis, or the second layer of the skin, is much thicker than the epidermis. It contains the vast network of blood vessels that supply the skin, as well as the hair follicles, sweat glands, oil glands, and sensory nerves. It's composed of dense connective tissue. The dermis gives the skin its elasticity and strength. And just below the dermis is a layer of fatty tissue called the subcutaneous layer, or subcutaneous connective tissue. It varies in thickness depending on what part of the body it covers. Subcutaneous tissue of the eyelids, for example, is thin, but that of the abdomen is thick. Alright. Digestive system is composed of the alimentary tract. Alimentary tract is the passage through which food travels. And the accessory organs, or organs that help prepare food for absorption and used by tissues of the body. The main function of the digestive system are to ingest and carry food so that absorption can occur and waste can be eliminated. Alright, you have a stomach, pancreas, liver, gallbladder, spleen, small and large intestines, and then you have the rectum and the anus. There's a diagram in your book that goes over this. Digestion consists of 2 processes, one mechanical and the other is chemical. The mechanical process includes chewing, swallowing, and peristalsis, which is the rhythmic movement of matter through the digestive tract, and defecation. The chemical process of digestion occurs when enzymes or digestive juices break food down into simple components that can be absorbed and used by the body. Carbohydrates are converted into glucose, which is simple sugar. Fats are changed into fatty acids, and the proteins are converted into amino acids. Urinary system, or renal system, filters and excretes waste from the blood. It consists of 2 kidneys, which filter waste from the bloodstream and help control fluid balance. You have 2 ureters, which carry the waste from the kidneys to the bladder. 1 urinary bladder, which stores the urine prior to excretion, and 1 urethra, which carries the urine from the bladder out of the body. The kidneys also play an important role in blood pressure regulation and red blood cell production. The urinary system helps the body maintain its delicate balance of water and various chemicals in the proportions needed for health and survival. During the process of urine formation, waste are removed from the circulating blood for elimination, and useful products are returned to help the blood. Kidney function also helps to maintain a normal acid-base balance in the body. The reproductive system of women and men consists of complementary organs that can function to accomplish human reproduction. The male sperm and the woman's ovum contribute to the genes that determine hereditary characteristics of an offspring. A combination of a single sperm with a single ovum forms a fertilized ovum, which can grow into an embryo, then into a fetus, and finally into a kid. The reproductive system of the male includes 2 testes, a duct system, accessory glands, including the prostate gland and the penis. The testes are responsible for the production of testosterone and the primary male hormone. Alright, female reproductive system consists of 2 ovaries, 2 fallopian tubes, the uterus, the vagina, and the external genitals. The ovaries produce and secrete estrogen and progesterone, the primary female hormones. Alright, medical terminology. Medical terminology is kind of like a language of its own. And the more you use it, the more you're going to understand it. Okay? We try to break words down. Okay? They have a prefix, a suffix. So prefixes are going to be hypo, hyper. What does hypo mean? Low. Okay, hyper. Alright. So if I told you somebody had hypovolemia, what would you think that they had? Well, what is vol? Volume. Low blood volume. Yes. Alright. They had hypoglycemia. Emia is a condition of the blood. Hyper is what? High. And glyco, sugar. Okay. Kevin and Tom begin transporting the patient to the closest hospital, 30 minutes away, and request the paramedic intercept en route, as well as notifying the hospital of the patient's condition. Upon reaching the hospital, surgeons immediately took the patient to the operating room, where they spent several hours repairing damages to the patient's liver, lung, femoral vein, and several blood vessels in the chest. All right. Anybody have any questions?